The pre-dawn quiet of the office clung to Ilara like the scent of stale coffee and ozone, a familiar companion. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, their rhythmic patter, the sole sound in the expansive room. Outside, the city remained a muted watercolor of grays and blues, but on her monitor, the Lumina Tower's crystalline structures pulsed with an internal luminescence. She was agonizingly close. The final energy conduit design, the one that would render the entire system stable, efficient, and truly revolutionary, was almost complete. A shiver of pure anticipation, entirely unrelated to the chill, traced a path down her spine. This wasn't merely a project. It was her spirit, forged in steel and light. Months of relentless nights, neglected meals, and endless calculations had been poured into these schematics. She saw beyond the lines of code and architectural renders, visualizing the actual tower, a luminous beacon against the urban skyline, its energy consumption a mere whisper, its brilliance an echoing roar. She truly was the architect of dreams, a weaver of towering visions. A notification chimed, abruptly pulling her from her focused reverie. An email from Mr. Davies, time-stamped moments ago. Her stomach clenched. Ilara, excellent progress on Lumina. I'll be presenting the final schematics to the board at 9 a.m. Ensure all files are finalized and uploaded to the shared drive by 8:30 sharp. Don't disappoint. The words landed like a cold slap. His presentation. His board. No acknowledgement of her name, no recognition of the sleepless nights that had etched faint lines around her eyes. She fixated on the screen, a familiar, acrid taste coating her tongue. It was a recurring pattern. Her ingenuity, his glory. A sudden, visceral urge to obliterate everything, to wipe the project clean, surged within her, to witness his face when he stood before the board with nothing but hollow promises. But then her gaze drifted to the Lumina Tower on her screen, its elegant lines, its intricate systems. It wasn't his. It was unequivocally hers. Deleting it would be akin to tearing out a piece of her own being. She drew a deep, shuddering breath, the metallic tang of the early morning air filling her lungs. This time, things would unfold differently. This time, she wouldn't merely fester in quiet resentment. She typed out a brief, precise email. Mr. Davies, all Lumina Tower schematics, including the final energy conduit designs, will be uploaded by 8:15 a.m. I've also attached a detailed technical brief outlining the innovative principles behind the new conduit system, which I believe will be beneficial for the board's understanding. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm. It wasn't a direct challenge, not yet, but it was a nascent assertion, a quiet claim of ownership. The technical brief, a document she had dedicated weeks to, wasn't just helpful. It was irrefutable proof of her intellectual property, emblazoned with her name on every page. As the sun finally crested the horizon, suffusing the office in hues of rose and gold, Ilara initiated the file upload. She watched the progress bar inch forward, a peculiar blend of triumph and disquiet swirling within her. She had subtly, yet definitively played her hand. Later that morning, the office settled into its customary hum. Ilara found herself pacing the small break room, the aroma of burnt toast doing little to soothe her frayed nerves. She repeatedly replayed Mr. Davies's face in her mind, imagining his reaction upon discovering the appended brief. Would he simply disregard it? Would he attempt to claim credit for that as well? Suddenly, the door swung open, admitting Liam, a junior architect with a perpetually bewildered expression. Ilara, you're in early. He paused, noting her tense posture. Everything all right? You look like you're about to grapple with a particularly stubborn blueprint. She managed a wan smile. Just a significant day for the Lumina project. Liam's eyes widened. Oh, right. Mr. Davies is presenting. Heard a whisper he's really gunning for the Design Innovator of the Year award, thanks to Lumina. The words hung in the air, sharp and unbidden. Ilara felt a cold knot tighten in her gut. So that was it. The award. The underlying motivation for his singular ruthlessness with this project. It wasn't solely about the board. It was about his ego, his public acclaim. and he was leveraging her work to achieve it. A different kind of resolve solidified within her. No, not this time. She wouldn't simply stand by and watch her dreams transmute into his accolades. The technical brief was merely the initial gambit. She had to strategize, to plan. The rising sun, now a brilliant glare through the window, seemed to mock her. But Alara, the architect of dreams, also possessed a formidable will, and she was just beginning to construct her own defenses. She returned to her desk, not to work, but to think. Her fingers, instead of flying across the keyboard, tapped a restless rhythm on the polished wood. The Lumina Tower, gleaming on her screen, now felt less like a shared vision and more like a purloined prize. The tension in the office was almost palpable, a silent current that crackled around her. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that the true battle was only just commencing. A spark of opportunity. The fluorescent hum of the office was a familiar drone, a soundtrack to Alara's meticulous work. Today, however, it grated on her nerves. The presentation deck, Project Phoenix, glowed on her monitor, a testament to countless late nights and skipped lunches. Every data point, every sleek graphic was her creation. Yet the header bore Liam's name, his title, and a company logo that felt less like an emblem of belonging and more like a brand of ownership. Liam, currently preening by the coffee machine, regaling a junior analyst with an exaggerated tale of his golf prowess, was oblivious to the quiet storm brewing within Alara. She'd seen this dance before, the subtle appropriation, the gentle erasure of her contributions. But Phoenix was different. Phoenix was her brainchild, a bold proposal to pivot their struggling division into a burgeoning new market. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, a phantom impulse to delete his name, to reclaim what was hers. But the anger, sharp and hot, was quickly doused by a colder, more strategic thought. Quitting in a blaze of glory would only satisfy a momentary urge. It wouldn't get her closer to where she wanted to be. Instead, a new, audacious idea began to percolate. Later that afternoon, as Liam was putting the finishing touches on his presentation, a nervous energy thrummed through the office. The quarterly review was always a high-stakes affair, but Project Phoenix was the buzz. Alara watched him from her desk, a quiet observer. He was good at the showmanship, she'd give him that. He spoke with confidence, even if the intricacies of the project were clearly not his own. Ilara? A word? His voice was smooth, almost oily, as he approached her desk. Just wanted to commend you on the support you provided. Your diligent data compilation was invaluable. The patronizing tone was a familiar sting. Thank you, Liam, she replied, her voice level, a carefully constructed mask of professional deference. I'm glad I could contribute. Her eyes, however, held a glint he didn't quite catch. Actually, I had a thought. Since Project Phoenix is so comprehensive, and given my deep familiarity with the detailed projections, I was wondering if it might be beneficial for me to join you for the Q&A session. I could address any technical queries that might arise. Liam paused, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. He hadn't anticipated this. His usual strategy was to dismiss her after the initial data dump, leaving him free to bask in the glow. But her suggestion, framed as helpful, was difficult to refuse without looking like he lacked confidence in his own understanding. The truth was, he probably did. Interesting thought, Ilara, he mused, stroking his chin. I suppose an extra layer of detail couldn't hurt. Just be sure to keep your answers concise. We don't want to bog down the executive committee. He gave her a tight smile, a victor's concession. Ilara mirrored his smile, a genuine spark in her eyes. Of course, Liam. Concise and accurate. Always. She watched him walk away, a spring in her step he mistook for eagerness to assist him. He had no idea he'd just handed her the very platform she needed. The meeting room was a sterile expanse of polished mahogany and hushed whispers. The air was thick with expectation. Liam began his presentation, his voice booming with practiced authority, the slides of Project Phoenix flashing behind him. Ilara sat beside him, a quiet presence, her senses heightened. She absorbed every question from the executive committee, noting the nuances, the areas of concern. When the Q&A began, Liam fielded the initial questions with his usual charm, but soon, a particularly complex query from Mr. Harrison, the head of strategic development, stumped him. Liam stammered, his confident facade beginning to crack. Perhaps Alara can elaborate on the projected market penetration for the APAC region, Mr. Harrison, Liam offered, a hint of desperation in his voice. He waved a hand in her direction, a silent plea. Alara took a deep breath, the moment she'd been waiting for. She spoke clearly, confidently, detailing the intricate projections, citing external market research she'd personally unearthed, and addressing potential challenges with pragmatic solutions. Her voice filled the room, calm and authoritative, in stark contrast to Liam's earlier bluster. She didn't just answer the question, she expanded on it, demonstrating an unparalleled depth of understanding. The executive committee leaned forward, their expressions shifting from polite interest to genuine engagement. A spark of opportunity, carefully fanned, had just ignited. The Sunshine House takes shape. The late spring sun, a warm balm after the biting winter, streamed through the newly installed windows of what was rapidly becoming the Sunshine House. Amelia stood amidst the organized chaos of construction, the scent of fresh lumber and drying paint a comforting perfume. Her hard hat, a bright yellow beacon, sat slightly askew on her head, a testament to the hours she'd spent directing, sketching, and problem-solving on-site. The crew, a motley but efficient group, moved with a practiced rhythm around her, their hammers ringing a steady beat against the emerging framework. "Looks like we're ahead of schedule on the West Wing, Amelia," Mark, the lead carpenter, called out, wiping sawdust from his brow with the back of a gloved hand. "Those prefabricated sections really saved us a good 2 days." Amelia grinned, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached her eyes. "Excellent, Mark. Let's aim to have the roof trusses up by end of next week, then we can start thinking about the interior walls." She consulted her clipboard, flipping through pages of detailed blueprints, her own meticulous handwriting filling the margins with notes and modifications. Every beam, every conduit, every window placement had been agonized over, revised and perfected under her watchful eye. This wasn't just a project, it was a living, breathing entity taking shape from her vision. The past few months had been a blur of early mornings and late nights, fueled by strong coffee and an unwavering dedication. She'd overseen the groundbreaking, solved unexpected geological issues with a clever drainage system, and negotiated with suppliers to keep costs down without compromising quality. Her initial design, a bold departure from the typical cookie-cutter residential builds, had been met with skepticism by some at Sterling and Sterling, but Mr. Sterling himself, after much convincing, had given it the green light, albeit with a caveat about stringent deadlines and budget adherence. Her phone buzzed, a jarring intrusion. It was Roger Sterling. "Amelia, progress report on the Sunshine House." His voice boomed, even through the speaker. "And make it succinct. I have a meeting in 5. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling. We're well ahead of schedule on the structural phase. The West Wing's exterior is nearly complete, and we anticipate having the roof fully framed by the end of next week. Budget remains on target, with a slight buffer due to some smart material sourcing." Amelia recited the facts, her tone professional, concise. There was a pause. "Excellent. Excellent. I'm presenting the mid-project update to the board next Tuesday. I'll need your comprehensive report by Monday morning, detailing every aspect, every success. Make sure to emphasize the innovative construction techniques and the cost-saving measures. This project is shaping up to be a real feather in Sterling and Sterling's cap." "Of course, Mr. Sterling. I'll have it on your desk," Amelia replied, a faint prickle of unease unsettling her. The way he'd phrased it, "I'm presenting Sterling and Sterling's cap," it felt less like a shared victory and more like an appropriation. She pushed the thought aside. Her focus needed to be on the build. Later that afternoon, as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the nascent structure, Amelia walked through the skeleton of the house. She imagined the future families laughing in the living room, children playing in the sun-drenched garden, the sustainable features she'd integrated quietly doing their work. This was her legacy, her tangible contribution. The soft hum of a saw cutting through timber in the distance was the only sound, a lullaby to her ambition. She ran her hand along a rough-hewn stud, feeling the solid wood beneath her fingers. The physical manifestation of her ideas was incredibly satisfying. But the conversation with Mr. Sterling had left a subtle residue, a question mark hovering just outside her conscious thought. She shook her head, dismissing it. There was too much to do, too much to create, to dwell on corporate politics. She pulled out her tablet, already envisioning the next phase, sketching out ideas for the bespoke kitchen and the solar panel array. The Sunshine House was taking shape, piece by painstaking piece, and she was the architect of its every breath. A grumble of approval. The scent of stale coffee and industrial strength cleaner clung to Alara's cubicle, a familiar backdrop to the quiet hum of her laptop. It was nearly 7 p.m., the office a skeletal version of its daytime bustle, yet she was still hunched over her keyboard, a half-eaten granola bar beside a stack of printed spreadsheets. The data on the screen, a dizzying array of market projections for the new Nexus product line, finally clicked into place. Months of late nights, skipped lunches, and the occasional weekend sacrificed to the digital altar of corporate ambition had culminated in this, a comprehensive, innovative strategy that promised to not only launch Nexus, but make it soar. A genuine thrill, a rare commodity in her often monotonous job, coursed through her veins. She hit save, a sense of accomplishment warming her, then attached the behemoth file to an email addressed to Mr. Thorne. Finally, Ilara. Mr. Thorne's voice boomed the next morning, cutting through the muted chatter of the office. He stood in the doorway of her cubicle, a broad smile plastered across his face. A thick printout of her report clutched in his hand. Excellent work. Truly excellent. Alara's chest puffed with a quiet pride. Thank you, sir. I think it's a solid plan. Solid doesn't begin to cover it, he declared, his gaze sweeping over her, not quite meeting her eyes. This is exactly what we needed. I've already presented it to the executive board. They were extremely impressed. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. They want me to lead the implementation. A full rollout, start to finish. Quote, the air in the cubicle seemed to thicken, the smile frozen on Alara's face. He presented it? He's leading the implementation? The words formed a cold knot in her stomach. You presented my report? She managed, her voice barely a whisper. Mr. Thorne chuckled, a sound that grated on her nerves. Of course! As head of the department, it's my responsibility to oversee these major initiatives. And frankly, Alara, you've outdone yourself. This will reflect very well on the department, and by extension, on me. He winked, a gesture that felt less like camaraderie and more like a dismissive pat on the head. Keep up the good work. We'll talk about the next phase soon. He turned, the printed report still in his hand, and strode away, leaving Alara adrift in a sea of conflicting emotions. The anger, hot and stinging, was immediate. Her fingers clenched into fists beneath her desk. All those hours, all that meticulous detail, the creative sparks that had ignited the innovative aspects of the plan, all of it now attributed to him. The injustice burned. Her first instinct was to confront him, to demand recognition, to expose the blatant credit stealing. She pictured herself storming into his office, the scene playing out in vivid, satisfying detail. But as the initial wave of fury subsided, a different thought began to emerge, a cooler, more strategic whisper. She took a deep, shaky breath, her gaze falling on a half-dead potted plant on her windowsill, its leaves drooping in silent resignation. She wouldn't quit. Not yet. Not like this. Quitting would be an emotional reaction, a concession. It would prove nothing. Instead, she imagined a different path. One where her work, her undeniable talent, would speak for itself, so loudly that even Mr. Thorne's attempts to muffle it would fail. This wasn't just about this project anymore. It was about proving her worth, not just to the company, but to herself. Later that afternoon, a meeting invitation popped up in her inbox. Nexus Implementation Strategy, Core Team Meeting. Mr. Thorne was listed as the host. Alara opened the invite, a wry smile touching her lips. The core team. It meant she would be indispensable to the execution of his plan. She clicked, accept, a flicker of determination replacing the earlier sting of betrayal. She would not just be the architect of this project, she would be its ghost in the machine, ensuring its success from the shadows, while subtly, meticulously, laying the groundwork for her own future. The battle wasn't over. It had just taken an unexpected and far more interesting turn. The big presentation. The air in the conference room was thick with the scent of lukewarm coffee and the nervous energy of a dozen executives. Amelia smoothed the lapels of her slightly too tight blazer, a gesture she'd repeated so many times in the last hour that the fabric felt thin under her fingertips. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs, a drumbeat that threatened to drown out the low murmur of conversation around her. This was it. Months of late nights, countless revisions, and enough caffeine to power a small city had all culminated in this moment. Across the polished mahogany table, Mr. Harrison, her boss, beamed at the assembled board members, a picture of confident composure. He held a sleek, leather-bound portfolio, identical to the one Amelia clutched, except his was empty. Hers, however, contained the meticulously crafted Phoenix Project proposal, a document born of her sweat and strategic brilliance. He caught her eye and offered a reassuring, almost paternal nod, a gesture that, in recent weeks, had begun to feel less genuine and more like a carefully constructed performance. "Good morning, everyone," Harrison's voice boomed, cutting through the anticipatory silence. He moved to the projector, his movements fluid and practiced. "Today, we're thrilled to unveil the Phoenix Project, a revolutionary initiative that I believe will redefine our market position and secure our future for decades to come." Amelia's grip tightened on her portfolio, her slides, her research, her innovative financial models. Harrison was about to present them as his own. A flicker of anger, hot and sharp, ignited in her stomach, but she quickly suppressed it. She'd made a decision, a difficult one, and now she had to see it through. As Harrison clicked through the opening slides, his voice a smooth, articulate baritone, Amelia focused on the details. The way he emphasized certain words, the slight pause before unveiling a key statistic, these were her rhetorical flourishes, strategies she'd painstakingly developed. It was like watching a meticulously choreographed dance, where she was the unseen choreographer and Harrison, the star performer. The board members leaned forward, captivated. Mr. Henderson, the CEO, a man known for his astute, piercing gaze, nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. Then came the Q&A. Harrison fielded the initial questions with ease, drawing on the deep well of knowledge Amelia had provided him. He parried a query about potential market saturation with a reference to her demographic analysis, and deflected a concern about implementation costs with a quote from her risk assessment. Amelia felt a strange detachment, as if she were observing a play unfold, rather than being an integral part of its creation. "Mr. Harrison, if I may," Mr. Henderson interjected, his voice cutting through the room with unexpected sharpness. "The projected ROI on this, it's quite aggressive. Can you walk us through the underlying assumptions for the first 3 years, specifically regarding the scaling of our acquisition channels?" Harrison paused, a barely perceptible hesitation. Amelia saw his eyes dart briefly towards her, a silent plea for assistance. This was a complex, multi-layered projection, one she had spent weeks fine-tuning. A mischievous impulse, a rebellious urge, threatened to bubble up. She could just sit there, let him flounder, let him taste the consequences of his appropriation. But then, she thought of the project itself, of the potential it held, the impact it could have. It wasn't just about Harrison's ego, or her own frustrated ambition. It was about the company, about the vision she had poured into every spreadsheet, every strategic recommendation. She met Harrison's gaze, a subtle message passing between them. He offered a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Certainly, Mr. Henderson," Harrison began, his voice regaining its confident stride. "Amelia, would you mind elaborating on the detailed projections for the acquisition channels?" You were instrumental in developing that particular model." A ripple of surprise went through the room. Board members turned to look at her, some with mild curiosity, others with dawning realization. Amelia felt a surge of adrenaline, but this time it was different. It wasn't fear, but a quiet, powerful determination. She rose, her movements deliberate, and walked to the projector. The spotlight, for a brief, exhilarating moment, was hers. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison," she said, her voice clear and steady, belying the tremor in her hands. "The acquisition channel projections are based on a tiered approach." As she spoke, detailing the intricate nuances of her model, she felt a quiet satisfaction. This wasn't the dramatic confrontation she had once envisioned, but it was a beginning, a subtle reclamation of her work, a seed planted in the minds of the people who mattered most. The room hummed with her words, and for the first time that morning, the project truly felt like her own. A stolen dream. The fluorescent lights of the office hummed, a low, constant drone against the late-night silence. Ilara's fingers flew across the keyboard, a flurry of motion fueled by the potent combination of lukewarm coffee and an unyielding deadline. The holographic display shimmered with intricate designs, the culmination of 3 months, relentless effort. Each line of code, every simulated stress test, every carefully sculpted aesthetic choice had been her singular focus. This wasn't just the Etherweave project, it was her dream, a tangible manifestation of years spent honing her craft. She imagined the product in users' hands, revolutionizing their daily interactions, a whisper of her ingenuity in every seamless transition. A sudden, sharp ping from her internal comms startled her. It was Ms. Albright, her direct superior, requesting a final project review. Now? Ilara glanced at the clock. It was nearly 2 a.m., a knot tightened in her stomach. Albright rarely worked past 6, let alone initiated late-night meetings. Still, the project was complete, polished, and ready. She sent the comprehensive data package, a digital scroll of her soul poured onto the network, then shut down her workstation, the satisfying click a punctuation mark on her exhaustive work. The next morning, the air in the office felt different. A palpable buzz hummed, not the usual Monday morning lethargy, but an electric excitement. Ilara felt a surge of pride, a quiet triumph that warmed her from within. She walked past colleagues clustered around water coolers, their hushed tones laced with admiration. Then she heard it, a fragment of conversation that froze her in place. "Albright's presentation this morning, did you see it? Revolutionary." Her heart began to pound, a frantic drumbeat against her ribs. She quickened her pace towards her cubicle, a sickening premonition chilling her skin. Her comms pinged again, this time with an all-staff announcement, a company-wide email from CEO Thorne. The subject line blared, "Introducing Etherweave, a breakthrough from Ms. Albright." The accompanying video link loaded, revealing Ms. Albright standing confidently on a brightly lit stage, the familiar holographic design of Ilara's Etherweave swirling behind her. Albright's voice, amplified and confident, filled the speakers. "I am thrilled to unveil Etherweave," she began, a broad, practiced smile on her face. "A concept I've personally guided from its inception, bringing together innovative design and unparalleled functionality." Ilara felt the blood drain from her face. The coffee mug in her hand trembled, threatening to slip. Every word Albright uttered was a fresh stab, each boast a theft. Her vision, her sleepless nights, her meticulous detail, all repackaged and presented as another's genius. She saw the images, the detailed schematics, the UI she had painstakingly crafted, all displayed as Albright's vision. Her breath hitched. The screen blurred. Her first instinct was a searing, consuming rage. To march directly into Albright's office, to scream, to demand retribution, to expose the lie. Her hands clenched into fists, nails digging into her palms. The injustice was a physical ache, a burning sensation behind her eyes. But then, a different thought, cold and clear, cut through the white-hot fury. What would that accomplish? A public outburst, a ruined reputation, a swift dismissal. Albright had the power, the influence, the ear of the CEO. Ilara, a mid-level engineer, had only her integrity, and right now, It felt like a heavy, useless burden. She closed the email. The image of Albright's triumphant smile burned into her mind. The humiliation threatened to overwhelm her, but beneath it, a tiny ember of defiance flickered. Quitting in a blaze of glory would feel good for a moment, but it wouldn't solve anything. It wouldn't reclaim her work. She took a deep, shuddering breath, forcing her racing heart to slow. Her eye scanned her desk, landing on a small, framed photo of her grandmother, whose quiet strength had always been an anchor. Revenge isn't about shouting, her grandmother used to say. It's about outliving and outsmarting. Ilara picked up her calms and typed a message to Albright, a carefully worded, neutral email. Congratulations on the successful launch of Etherweave. I look forward to discussing the next steps for its continued development. Her fingers hovered over the send button, a battle raging within her, but a strange calm settled over her. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of a different kind of fight. A fight waged not with rage, but with meticulous planning, quiet determination, and an unbreakable will. The dream had been stolen, yes, but its true architect still remained. And she was far from finished. A new path forward. The scent of stale coffee and printer toner hung heavy in the air of the late-night office, a familiar companion to Amelia's solitary grind. The final lines of code for the Project Chimera interface glowed on her screen, a testament to countless hours fueled by cold pizza and a singular vision. Her fingers, stiff from typing, hovered over the Compile button. This was it. Months of meticulous design, endless debugging, and a relentless pursuit of elegant functionality, all culminating in this moment. A quiet sense of triumph, fragile yet potent, bloomed in her chest. She pressed the key. The progress bar crawled, then vanished, replaced by a crisp compilation successful. A weary smile touched Amelia's lips. She leaned back, stretching the knots from her shoulders, and gazed at the intricately designed dashboard. The data flowed seamlessly, the user experience intuitive, exactly as she'd envisioned. This wasn't just code. It was a solution, a genuine leap forward for the company. She saved the final version, attached a detailed report outlining her contributions, and scheduled it for immediate review by Mr. Silas Blackwood, her boss. A wave of anticipation, mingled with a faint, uneasy tremor, washed over her. She knew this project was her ticket, her chance to prove her worth beyond the usual back-end grunt work. The next morning, the office buzzed with an unusual energy. Amelia arrived to find a celebratory banner proclaiming Project Chimera, a new era, strung across the lobby. A knot tightened in her stomach. Her colleagues offered congratulations, their smiles full of genuine admiration, but none mentioned her. Their praise was directed at Mr. Blackwood's brilliant new initiative. Amelia's heart began a slow, agonizing drumbeat against her ribs. She found Silas in the conference room, basking in the glow of a presentation screen, his voice booming with confident pronouncements. On the screen, the interface she'd meticulously crafted shone, emblazoned with a slide proclaiming, "Designed and developed by Silas Blackwood." He gestured expansively, taking full credit for every innovative feature, every elegant solution she had poured her soul into. Her detailed report, her name, her very existence in the project's genesis, were conspicuously absent. A searing heat prickled behind Amelia's eyes. The triumph of the previous night curdled into a bitter, metallic taste. Her first instinct was to stride into the room, to expose the lie, to reclaim what was rightfully hers. Her hands clenched into fists, nails digging into her palms. But then, a strange, almost serene calm descended. She watched Silas, inflated with borrowed glory, and a different thought began to form. Anger, she realized, was a quick burn, often leaving only ashes. What if there was another way? A path forward that didn't involve a public confrontation, a dramatic exit, or the bitter satisfaction of a temporary victory. She excused herself from the throng of congratulating colleagues, their cheerful obliviousness a dull ache in her chest. Back at her desk, the faint aroma of the office's weak coffee did little to soothe her churning stomach. She opened a fresh document, not for code, but for thoughts. Her mind, usually so precise and logical, wrestled with the raw emotion of betrayal. Yet, beneath it, a quiet resolve began to harden. What if she didn't quit in a blaze of righteous fury, leaving her hard work behind? What if she used this experience, not as a wound to fester, but as a blueprint for her next move? Amelia pulled up the company directory, her cursor hovering over the names of department heads, not just her department, but others. Marketing, product development, even the elusive R&D division. She started crafting an email, not to accuse, but to connect, to propose, to offer her unique skills, sharpened by months of uncredited labor, to departments that might truly appreciate them. The air around her shifted, no longer heavy with resentment, but charged with a nascent energy. This wasn't about revenge, it was about self-preservation, about charting a course where her contributions would be undeniable, her name indelibly etched into the fabric of her own future. A new path, indeed. The mayor's visit. The scent of polished wood and stale coffee hung heavy in the air of the conference room, a familiar prelude to what often felt like an interrogation. Eliza traced the rim of her cooling mug, her gaze drifting over the pristine, untouched whiteboards. Today, however, the air thrummed with a different kind of anticipation, a nervous energy that permeated even Mr. Harrison's usually unflappable demeanor. He paced a tight circle near the window, occasionally adjusting the knot of his silk tie, a telltale sign of his own heightened anxiety. "Remember, Eliza," he said, stopping abruptly to face her, "this is a major opportunity. The mayor's office has shown significant interest in the Green Canopy initiative. Your presentation needs to be flawless." His emphasis on "your" felt less like an acknowledgement and more like a thinly veiled warning. Eliza nodded, a practiced smile on her lips. "I've gone over everything a dozen times, Mr. Harrison. The data is solid, the projections are conservative, and the community impact is clearly articulated." She had spent the last 8 months of her life meticulously crafting the proposal, overseeing the initial pilot programs, and personally engaging with neighborhood groups. It wasn't just data to her, it was a tangible step towards a more sustainable city. A tremor of unease still prickled her skin. Harrison had been unusually hands-on with the final edits, insisting on adding specific phrasing and even a few slides that seemed less about the project's merit and more about his department's perceived efficiency. She'd bitten her tongue, reminding herself of the larger goal. The heavy oak doors swung open precisely at 10, revealing a small entourage. Mayor Thorne, a woman whose sharp intellect was often overshadowed by her equally sharp suits, entered first, her gaze sweeping the room with an almost clinical assessment. Behind her, a stern-faced aide clutched a leather portfolio, and a young woman, presumably an intern, juggled a tray of bottled water. "Mr. Harrison, Ms. Vance," Mayor Thorne greeted, her voice a smooth alto. "Thank you for making time." "The pleasure is all ours, Mayor," Harrison gushed, extending a hand. "We're incredibly excited to share the Green Canopy initiative with you. It's a project I've personally championed for months." He gestured grandly towards Eliza, who felt a familiar tightening in her chest. Eliza stepped forward, her heart thrumming a quick rhythm against her ribs. "Good morning, Mayor. I'm Eliza Vance, the lead project manager for Green Canopy." She offered a firm handshake, meeting the mayor's intelligent eyes. Thorne's grip was surprisingly strong. The presentation began. Eliza clicked through the slides she knew intimately, explaining the ecological benefits, the economic advantages, and the carefully calculated community engagement strategies. She spoke with passion, weaving in anecdotes from her time speaking with residents in underserved neighborhoods, detailing how the new urban forestry could mitigate heat islands and improve air quality. She saw a flicker of genuine interest in Mayor Thorne's eyes when she showed the projected decrease in asthma rates among children in the pilot areas. Harrison interjected at strategic points, adding flourishes about departmental synergy and his vision for urban renewal. Each time, he subtly reframed Eliza's work, making it sound as if he were the primary architect of the ideas. Eliza's jaw tightened, but she maintained her professional composure, her voice unwavering. And of course, Harrison boomed, taking over the final summary slide, which featured a prominent photo of him shaking hands with a community leader. This initiative perfectly aligns with the mayor's own commitment to sustainable development. I'm confident that with the city's backing, We can implement this ambitious plan across all 5 boroughs, thanks to the groundwork laid by my team and my personal oversight. Mayor Thorne leaned back, her expression unreadable. A very impressive presentation, Mr. Harrison. And, Ms. Vance, your detailed research is clearly exceptional. She paused, her gaze lingering on Eliza. I confess, I'm particularly interested in the community outreach aspect. How exactly did you manage to get such a diverse group of stakeholders on board? Eliza felt a surge of validation. It involved a lot of listening, Mayor. Weekly town halls, partnerships with local nonprofits, and a commitment to addressing their specific concerns, not just presenting a prepackaged solution. We tailored educational materials for different age groups and even ran a successful youth ambassador program. Harrison cleared his throat, a subtle warning. Yes, Ms. Vance did an excellent job coordinating the teams I assembled for that effort. Mayor Thorne's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly at Harrison. I see. She stood, gathering her papers. This is certainly something worth exploring further. Mr. Harrison, please have your office compile a comprehensive implementation timeline and budget. I'll need it on my desk by end of day Friday. She turned to Eliza, a faint, knowing smile playing on her lips. And Ms. Vance, I'd appreciate a separate, more detailed report on the specifics of your community engagement strategy. Send it directly to my aide, Ms. Davies. The air crackled with unspoken meaning. Harrison's smile faltered, replaced by a strained look. Eliza felt a quiet triumph blossom in her chest, a small but significant victory in the ongoing battle for recognition. The mayor's discerning eye had seen beyond the polished facade, directly to the substance of the work. As Thorne and her entourage exited, the scent of fresh air momentarily replaced the stale coffee, a hopeful promise of change. Rainbows and recognition. The digital clock on Alara's monitor glowed 2:17 a.m. Her shoulders ached, a persistent thrumming beneath the skin, but a strange energy coursed through her veins. The final presentation slides for the Era Solidabotion project were polished, each animation flowing seamlessly, every data point meticulously sourced and visualized. This wasn't just a project. It was a testament to countless late nights, discarded drafts, and the quiet thrill of discovery. She had breathed life into the raw data, creating a narrative that would, she hoped, captivate the board. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips as she hit save. The next morning, the conference room hummed with a nervous anticipation that wasn't entirely her own. Elara sat beside Mr. Thorne, the senior director, a man whose silver hair and tailored suits exuded an air of effortless authority. He held the clicker, a small, black device that felt heavier than it looked. His gaze, however, was fixed on the screen, not on her. Good morning, everyone, Mr. Thorne began, his voice smooth and resonant. Today we're here to discuss Project Aurora, a groundbreaking initiative that my team and I have been developing. Elara, he gestured vaguely in her direction, has been instrumental in compiling some of the foundational data. He paused, a beat too long, then clicked to the first slide. Elara's breath hitched. Instrumental in compiling some of the foundational data? The words felt like tiny, stinging needles. She had designed the entire architecture, written the algorithms, crafted the narrative flow that was now unfolding on the enormous screen. Each carefully chosen image, each elegant transition was a piece of her creative soul. Yet, as Mr. Thorne spoke, his voice confidently articulating her insights, her solutions, a cold dread began to coil in her stomach. He was a master of presentation, his delivery flawless, his explanations concise. He made it sound like his vision, his meticulous oversight. She watched the board members, their faces rapt, nodding approvingly at the projections she had painstakingly built. A flash of vibrant color, a rainbow graph illustrating potential growth, shimmered on the screen. A detail she had added at the last minute, a touch of optimistic artistry. It felt like a cruel joke, a beautiful lie. During the Q&A, a board member, Miss Davies, leaned forward. Mr. Thorne, the predictive modeling here is truly remarkable. How did your team achieve such a sophisticated level of foresight? Mr. Thorne smiled, a practiced, charming expression. A combination of innovative data aggregation And a deep understanding of market dynamics, Ms. Davies. We pushed the boundaries of traditional analytics. He then gestured towards Ilara, a dismissive flick of his wrist. Ilara here provided excellent support in processing the raw data, allowing us to build this robust framework. The air in the room seemed to thicken. Ilara felt a flush creeping up her neck, hot and mortifying. Her hands, clasped tightly in her lap, trembled slightly. A dozen angry retorts sprang to mind, sharp and biting, but they died on her tongue. The scene played out like a twisted pantomime, her efforts reduced to mere support. The recognition, the praise, the admiration of the room, all directed at the man beside her. Later, as the meeting concluded and the room emptied, Mr. Thorne turned to her, a casual, almost paternal pat on her shoulder. Excellent work, Ilara. Your contributions were invaluable. This project is going to be a huge success for the company. His words, meant to be commendatory, felt like a deliberate insult. He walked away, humming softly. Ilara stood alone in the silent conference room, the lingering scent of expensive coffee and ambition in the air. The bright, colorful slides still glowed on the screensaver, mocking her. Her first instinct was to rage, to confront him, to expose the lie. Her fingers tightened into fists. But then a different thought began to form, a slow, cold realization that settled deep within her. Anger would achieve nothing but her own downfall. She had built this. Every pixel, every line of code. She knew its intricacies, its potential, its vulnerabilities. A different path began to emerge, not one of fury, but of quiet, strategic understanding. She would let him take the credit. For now. But she would also remember every detail, every nuance, every unique element of her work. She would not quit. She would observe. She would learn. And she would ensure that her true value, her undeniable talent, would eventually become undeniable to everyone. The knot of anger in her stomach began to loosen, replaced by a steely resolve, cold and sharp as a newly honed blade.